Do it.
So we were all just talking about like each of us doing our work. Andre and Sarah and I are all writers, and we're all also alum. Andre is almost an alum from the Mile-High MFA. And by work, I mean writing, and also like the head stuff and the life stuff that we get in order to be able to do that work. And so I wanted to start our conversation there, just about work, the work.
Mm-hmm. The work. Yeah. Sarah, did you want to start, or should I?
You start, and then I'll get ideas from you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we were, previously discussing the work, and, I had this friend, Falada Speaks. It's a beautiful poet name, by the way, Falada Speaks. And then she married this dude whose last name was Love. And so for a long time, it was Falada Speaks Love. And I was just like, well, I know how your career is going to go, because, she became a healer. She's a Reiki person. She does massage. She reads cards and stones. And she's always been that person. I've known her forever and ever. Krista Franklin and I grew up in the same area. So the reason I brought her up is one time she told me, and this was, 20 plus years ago, she mentioned that people who are what they are, poets, painters, musicians, can't get away with not doing their work for too long. It causes turmoil, causes inner turmoil. It makes you feel like you are arrested in some manner. And I've thought about that for years, especially years of non-activity. So for me, I was very productive when I was young, and I was publishing a lot and going to workshops and such. And then I started this corporate career. And the gain was to get safe, gather some dough, get comfortable. And I just wasn't writing much at all. But I kept in touch with writers because, every once in a while somebody was like, I'm doing an anthology, could you send me a poem? Yeah, and through Khadijah, she's a community member that I've known for a long time. A couple of years ago, Khadijah Queen, Dr. Queen. I was speaking with her. We were just having coffee or whatever, and I was telling her, I was at a spiritual crossroad at that moment. I was like, I'm not happy with the job that I've been spending so much time pursuing. And I need to do something about my writing, but I'm just not doing it because splitting my mind into the corporate part, winding down enough to do the writing, was a really hard transition. Right. So I was talking to her, and that's how the MFA came about. So Mile-High was not my first choice, and it still isn't. What works at the time was I was like, maybe there's a way I can maintain my work life and go to this program, which is in town. I can drive to it, take off vacation time, go and do the retreats, right?
Right.
But it has been really instrumental, because what I need is, for me to do the work, at least at this point, is I needed new deadlines. I needed motivation to produce. So otherwise the ideas were scattered, and I needed to be able to write, more all the time. Now, it's been a tough year, so I've not been on my work like we were talking about as much, but I've been doing enough work to stay in the program, right? But that unrest is what kind of brought me to this point. So I think unless you're really closed off, the work finds a way to sometimes work you. Like, it started disruption in my life where I was highly unsatisfied, which led me to, I need to talk to somebody else who's doing the work, right? I sought a person who was out there doing it and doing it well. Obviously, Dr. Queen is phenomenal. Yeah. So, and her decisiveness was pretty much like, well, then you should do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Always very clear.
Yeah, and I was like, well, I'll think about it, and maybe next year I'll get started, blah, blah. I think we had coffee on a Sunday, and then Tuesday, David was calling me from the program. Khadijah said I should call you and get to know your work. And I was like, yeah, I was thinking about your program. And I was like, again, next year,
Right.
like this was like May 2 years ago, like, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I'll join in January, blah, blah. He's like, you should join now. And I was like, what? I was like, both of you are on some other stuff right now. Like, he's like, yeah, you got to he's like, I need a sample, I need transcripts, I need this and that. Can you do all that? And I was like, I don't know about all of that. But there it was, the opportunity, right? To do the work that I have been telling myself I want to and need to do. So I did. I got it together, and obviously I got into the program. Now the program is young, so it needs some things, and I think that will come through consultation. I've been talking to lots of people about what I think it needs, not just as like a novice, but I've been to lots of retreats that are
like big
successful
ones.
Yeah,
like Cave Canem.
Exactly. And so I've seen how to make a successful retreat. I mean, with Jericho Brown winning the Pulitzer a couple days ago,
right?
Cave Canem has 6 or 7 Pulitzers. So the program structure is not. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like some of that stuff is working, right? So the way they do things, it's valuable to adopt some things from there. So I've been trying to get that in the right ear. Dr. Queen and I have spoken about it a few times. Yeah. So the program has work to do. We all have work to do. But one of her important points, which I'm sure she's told you guys before, is you get out of it what you either put in or want to get out of it. Like, you can't really be passive.
Absolutely.
And that all sounds great. It's a little bit more difficult in enacting it, which is what I found. Life gets in the way. I had a friend that was ill, and that friend then passed, and it affected me. And there's been a lot of grief this year, but at the same time, there it is. Keep plugging away, doing the work. And for me, the work is the writing. I feel better when I'm doing writing, even if the writing is not good, because I feel like you're doing something that you're either supposed to be doing, and I don't know what the greater plan is. Am I supposed to be doing this for myself? Is it to benefit other people? But you know that you need to do it. So, and so it goes back to what Falada had said all those years ago. Like, the people who have that work to do cannot really avoid it. It shows up in their life. They have to be musicians. They have to, if they're writers, they have to write. If you're a singer, you're gonna have to sing. All of it. If you're a painter, you're gonna have to paint. Like, you can put it off as long as possible, but it's gonna creep up on you, and you need to do it. Be who you are. And so I've always taken those two things as very valuable. It informs my idea and philosophy about the work. I'm still always working on it. I'm not great. The 30-30 that we did was the first one that I've ever completed.
For National Poetry Month?
Yeah. And I mean, I've been doing them for years, right? But I've never actually completed one. And so this was the first one I completed, right? So It was like, okay. So set a new goal, right? Keep going, whatever. But for me, it's to build discipline that I've been lacking. People my age who have been writers now have a pretty set discipline. I haven't, because I've been a corporate flunky for many years. Pandemic comes along, and there goes your corporate flunky job. So now, like, I'm, the thing that's at my hands and at my disposal is to still, again, work on that discipline as far as being a writer.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, going off of what Andre said, I told my boyfriend the other day, someone was saying, like, follow your passion or whatever. And I was just like, damn, like, I wish my passion would stop following me.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Right. I feel like you feel this way, Tamika, a lot because, you know, we both have a lot going on where we just like have to do all these projects at once. And it's because we're not seeing them in the world and we want to see them in the world. Exactly. And unfortunately, that means we have to do it even if we're busy or, you know, failing at some of them or not, you know, the best person to be doing it. At least it's in the world. That was my thread of thought.
I'm bouncing off of that. Like, I'm just thinking about all the times I'm just like, stop yelling at me, because it's like, you know, I'll do a tarot reading about one subject and it's talking about my work, but that wasn't what I was asking about. Or like, or sometimes strangers just in the street like say weird shit to me, and I'm like, excuse me, what did you just say? Or people call out of the woodwork and they're like, hey, I need you to do this thing with me, or hey, are you doing this thing? So one recent thing was all I wanted was enough money to reinstate my web domain.
I remember this.
With the poetry postcards, you know, and I thought maybe 3 people would answer, and I hadn't even barely put the thing on the social media page, and then 3 people, boom, right away. Like, I feel like as soon as it posted, it was like they saw it before I posted it. And then they kept coming, and I even got a couple this week. And
nice.
I'm super thankful for that. I was able to help a couple other people and obviously reinstate my web domain and pay my T-Mobile bill and buy a bunch of plants.
All the important things.
It was like, and it was just like, it was something that was working, you know, it was something that was really working. And then an organization asked for some of the cards. So,
that's awesome. And these are the cards that you posted, right?
Poetry cards, with like photos and stuff. I don't have them right here, but like,
I've seen some. It's a very neat idea.
Well, I mean, it's not an original idea. It's just like, I mean, what is something I can do that's what I want to do, but not quite copying everyone else. And also it was National Poetry Month, so I didn't quite make 30 this year. I did last year. I did 42 or somewhere around there last year. But this year I didn't, maybe 12, 15. And I'm still working on new little poems or variations of poems for the cards. Because I kind of promised 3 brand new poems for each packet, even though most of them either have one very new one or 2, and then maybe a variation of one or the same one that I feel like is pretty good for whatever image. So
it reminds me of this person I know named Lynn Gentry.
Oh, you know Lynn?
Yeah.
I interviewed him.
Did you?
Yeah, for a while ago. He's a typewriter poet in New York. And I don't know if you know who Abby Mott is. Abby Mott is a typewriter poet in Denver. And she actually, it was kind of like this gift of being a typewriter poet in the streets, like busking, was kind of handed to her. And so she's been carrying it, and there's been a movie about her and stuff too. Anyway, you were saying about Lynn Gentry. Sorry. That's
I met him in San Francisco a long time ago. He used to live there. And then
you lived in San Francisco?
Who?
You?
No, I was visiting.
Oh, okay.
And I met Lynn there, who was living there. But,
okay.
You know, he'd be out on the like the corner. Well, he'd pick a different corner all the time. But like, I think I encountered him on Haight and Ashbury, and he was there with his typewriter. And you know, it'd be like, you know, if you'd want a poem, you just go up and talk to him, and he would type you a poem right there. You know, and so all of the poems in that sense are original.
Yeah,
they're in the moment. And I know people who have them at home, like, oh, this is the poem I got from Lynn, like
I
10 years ago.
I have a Lynn Gentry poem around here somewhere.
That is so awesome. But the thing I like about that is that it's an ideal that's way above what I think I'm even capable of. But it is inspiring, you know, and so the postcards reminded me of that, which is why I brought Lynn up, is that you're making these individual works and they're sort of existing in a realm of temperance or temporariness. You know, the fact that they're not going to stay with you. I mean, they might last in some because someone is cherishing them, but as far as,
who knows?
yeah, right. But you know, instead of like collecting them, they've left you. You made the poem. There's not a lot of time for like revision, anything. You made it. You put it out. It goes with this image or whatever, and it's gone, right? But also then, you know, he's doing as far as Lynn, and I'm not sure about Mott. Like I don't know her. I don't know them. But with Lynn, he's doing it 50, 100 times a day. Writing 100 poems a day. And so I was just like, wow, this is. I'm just gonna bookmark it in my mind somewhere. Of something that I know I'll never reach, but you know, our conversation about work, you know, brings up something satisfying to me, which is, again, if I could get a discipline where I'm like, oh, I wrote something every day or attempted to write something every day, but there was this effort to do it, I would become more happy to feel like I am working towards whatever it is I'm working towards.
I mean, and that's the thing. That's the gig, right? That's what a lot of us have been told. Is like you write every day, and that's really stressful to think about. Henry, I like what Henry Miller said. He said after a while he stopped thinking about it so much and just figured. I'm sorry, I'm misquoting it. It was something about like remembering the things he needed to remember to write, and then at some point giving up on that and just being like, you know what, the stuff that needs to come out when it comes out will come out. So sorry, that's not quite the same thing.
No, it isn't. But I think with Miller in particular, he did have that discipline at one point.
Yeah.
And then being accomplished and evolving, you know, I think our work looks different as we get older, you know.
Yeah.
I like Alice Notley. Do you know her work?
Mm-hmm.
The things that have happened to her in life as a poet has affected her poetry, which is what we would expect. But, you know, she's had some very tragic things happen. And it's changed her poetry, it's changed her form, sometimes changed the message. And so for me, changes the voice, because I've always been resistant to voice, which is something people always have told me. You need to find your voice and hone your voice and blah. And I'm like, and for me, it's akin to branding. You want me to be able to write something, and when someone looks at it and like, that is Andre's work, but that's not how my mind is. You know, sometimes my work is these like, I have 4 canvases over here and some paints that I haven't used in many years, but like I had this overwhelming drive the other day to go get them and break out the paints, and so they're like ret to go for whenever the thing that's supposed to come out of there does, you know. And so I think our sense of work and our discipline evolves, but like for me, I'm just trying to get it set up, and then I can do some hidden Miller shit like, yeah, you know, I'm just going to channel the poem that needs to come out right now. But right now I'm just like, I've got to be open and equipped to deliver the message. Otherwise I'm not a good vessel, you know, like, so if I'm not writing, I'm not sharp, you know, I'm not clever, my images are not on point. When this really important message comes from wherever it does, and I write some trite shit, it's just going to go to the next person like, nah, this, you know, he ain't doing it. Like, let's, you know, let's go to you. Can you put this work out the way it needs to be? And it reminds me of what Sarah says, like, the work is absent, someone needs to do it. You might not be the best person, but you open the door for the best person.
Yeah.
To come along and do it, because they've just seen you do it. Like, I didn't know you could do that. I wanted to do that. Boom, they're better at it than you. Well, it's not a competition. It's just that, you know, they're equipped to do it. And I think of the people who make forms, like Ruth Coker, who make up forms, and then people run with it. Like, oh my God, this is the most brilliant form. And Terrence Hayes, whose Golden Shovel was his form. And then people have done whole books on the golden shovel.
Mm.
I mean, and hopefully Terrence didn't see this, but I'm just saying sometimes those people are a lot better at the shovel than he is. But he was the vehicle to bring the form. He had that kind of mind. I can make a new form, and then you recently release it in the world, and it becomes everybody's form.
Mm.
Sort of like Ruth. She does that too. So anyway, sorry, I've taken up a lot of time going on and on there. Sorry, Sarah. What did you want to say anything about that?
I'm good. I'm just listening.
I do want you to talk about the things that you've worked on and stuff, because you're an amazing person for getting folks together and connecting people and also supporting them. Like I have just a couple of these chapbooks that you made for me. Because I
need to do more of those.
And it's really cool. Sarah has a very small press and pretty much just makes books for poets so that they can have something when they go to readings and stuff. So some of us haven't published anything necessarily in a book form. Maybe you can't. There's my
pictures very artistic.
And the poems on the other side. And this is really special. Actually, when I announced that this was available, 3 people came right away to my house because they wanted one, and I was so very surprised. I just did a name your own price, and I was very humbled with what happened there. And I know you do a lot of other things too, and I do want to hear about that.
Okay. I feel like I'm going to list all the things I do, and then I'm going to be like, oh my God, what happened to that project? What happened to that project? I'm just one of those people, where I'm like, whatever I think about at the time is what I do, and then kind of keep moving whatever it's gaining its own momentum. But yeah, the chapbooks started because my friend Melanie was doing a poetry reading, and for the reading, I helped to book the reading because I wanted her to read there, but at the reading you needed to have product, because they used to do a donation-based thing where they would pass a hat around, but then they kind of phased that out and they were like, no, just sell your books. But I'm like, not every poet has a book. So I was like, I want Melanie to make money. So this was a week or 2 before her reading, and I was like, hey Melanie, let's make a book. And she's used to it because I've been working with her a lot in publishing and just kind of throwing ideas out there, and she usually bites. So she's like, okay, so we made a little book, and she sent it to me, and I did very minor editing, just kind of editing the narrative, or being like, oh, do you have one more poem with this theme to kind of complete it? So she added the poem in. And then we made the book, and then I think I was talking to you about it, Tamika, when I was in Denver. And you're like, oh, that'd be cool, let's do it. And then we did it. And I think that's my Writing in the World project for graduating.
Wow, that's a really cool one. I mean, it has definitely meant a lot to me. And it's just I've just been thinking about all these different ways, the way we act in communities now, and the way maybe poets in the 70s and 60s did. There are always these things that we pass back and forth between each other. And also I hang out with a lot of artists too, and I remember, gosh, I don't know how many years, it was probably about 12 years ago, Denver Drink and Draw, way back in the beginning when they still let the writers there too. Denver Drink and Draw is a group of illustrators and comic artists and stuff. And it was just really cool going to those meetings, because all of the artists, they'd be like, oh, I'll draw that for you, or I'll draw something for you. And there were just all of these gifts made of really kind of beautiful art that happened in the moment. And then of course there was the whole Exquisite Corpse, the art Exquisite Corpse, which I love as a poet. And so there were just a lot of things that I learned, a lot about community and a lot about collaborations and stuff that would just happen, a lot of them in the moment, and some of them lasted a long time too. And that was connected somehow. So I'm gonna shut up and let you talk now because I lost it.
No, yeah, I think you were saying that you cherish that she actually does that, and
yeah,
you're
because
grateful.
it's I mean, a lot of times out here in this literary community, it feels a little man bite dog, or like everyone's supposed to support just these 3 people over here. And like, I mean, I know people who are sitting on their work who need to publish it. And like, I have for a long time wanted to help them do that. And I've tried to start my own publications and stuff because of that very reason, you know, because they're not. And then I feel bad sometimes too, because it's so good. They need to be sending it to like Poetry Magazine or somewhere than my little piddly thing, you know?
Yeah, well, let me, can I jump in on that real quick? Because I think all the work is important.
Thank you for that.
You know, and I'm just going to make an illustrative point about it. I used to run a journal called Ambulant. And I think I told one of you this story before, but like, I didn't even recognize, like, you know, sometimes I just published what I wanted, which was the main thing. I used to work as an editor for another journal, and it was more like, you know, you had these sort of invisible guidelines as to what we published. And I was like, you're interested in people who've had a lot of exposure, and I'm interested in exposing people who don't get any.
I love underdogs, and I love the folks that no one's paying attention to, because there's a lot of, I think a lot of folks,
that's what changes the new.
Yeah, because a lot of folks who are on top, they don't have time to grow,
innovate,
because they're so busy being that, you know, being that face. And then that's not necessarily always true, right? It's not necessarily,
no, not always,
but I do see that happening sometimes. And then there are a lot of folks who, you know, are the big names that do bring other people to the table, and that's really cool to see. So I've learned a lot from that. I mean, I'm, you know, wherever I am, I don't even have a book published, but like, there are things that I can still do. It's kind of like, I think of it as like, you've reached a certain viewpoint, and it's different than the one, and you can see much further, right? You can see, and you can help a few people up. And I feel like there is no lack, and I think a lot of us in these communities get Jedi mind tricked into like the lack story, but there really, I don't think there is any lack.
Right. And so I didn't realize what the journal meant to people, you know, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately and bringing it back, and especially now that I don't have a job, right? So I've been like, oh, you know, you used to do this journal, you really enjoyed it, like but it was Francine Harris that reminded me through a Facebook post too. I was just like, she was talking about publishing somewhere. I mean, she's been everywhere, right? And she was talking about something, and I was like commenting on the post and blah, blah. And then I think I can't remember if she posted her messages. She was like, you're the first person that published my poem. She's like, I used to send things out and just get rejected, you know? And like, you know, for whatever reason, whatever her submission was at the time was like, I was like, oh, this is fire. This is going in, you know, and which is great when you don't have those sort of guidelines to, you know, sometimes restrain you. You know, I was doing that with my housemate, Michael, you know, and so I was like, Michael, you teach sculpting, you're a sculptor, you're on the art. You know, if we get art submissions, you're going to look at that shit first, and then I'm going to look at it. And then if we get poems, I'm going to look at it first, and I'm going to give it to you, and then we can, you know, decide. So that was the only process there was, besides, I like this, I would like to see it published. So, so just like, you know, what you were saying, not having a book out, you know, some of us sitting on our work, which I'm doing a lot of, because I don't send anything out, like, you know, at all. And I used to, you know, or I used to, you know, at least people would at least ask for a poem, and I'd be like, oh, I got poems, there you go. You know, but I think it, you know, goes back to like what Sarah is doing with the chapbooks. Like, you just don't know what it can do for someone else, this vehicle. And I think, Tamika, you were sort of had a testimony to that. Is like, once the books existed, people wanted them. You know, it was like they just needed to be there, and then they were like, yeah, we really are interested in your work. We want that. We want your work.
Yeah.
You know, and so like, creating a vehicle.
Right. it's like, what do you do when people after a reading are like, hey, how can I get some of your work? And you're like, oh, I don't know.
On my computer.
On my computer.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and I've forgotten to take these with me a lot of times, which is silly. Because, you know, there's also that, like, I guess always selling yourself short kind of thing too. Like, you know, there's like a spectrum of like people who are very self-important, and I feel like I need to be a little more on that side a little bit, instead of being like, I'm doing a reading and then I'm gonna go home and, you know, not really, and then I forget about it. Anyway.
No, but I mean, I think there's a danger in our community for that developing, because I see it happening around some people already. Like, you know, like for whatever reason, they've got the personality cult, and it's sort of like, support this person. And I'm like, sometimes they're not great people, you know, so I'm not going to do that. Thing is,
a new thing I've been telling myself lately is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sometimes the work is really amazing. And I know that's going to make some people mad because, you know, there are some characters in multiple different communities that are very problematic.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just always think of Picasso, who changed the face of art. He's a real dick. He's a real fucking asshole.
A lot of them.
But we can't throw the baby out with the dishwater, because you look at his art, you're like, oh shit. Or Ezra Pound, he you know, was fascist, and
Pound's a hard one.
Kind of saved him. But his work changed the way we look at poetry and the way we study poetry. So like, you know, not that in my opinion he's the most important person, but I do like his work, and there are a lot of reasons why.
Yeah, a conversation I had with Michael Schiffler a lot, because he really likes Ezra Pound. And I was like, but he's a fascist, you know. So I was like, I don't deal with, you know, and but
I just don't know what the hell he's talking about when I read his work.
Who, Schiffler or Pound?
Pound.
Oh, okay.
I read it. I don't know what I just read. I read it like 30 times, and I'm like, I don't know what I just read.
Yeah, I mean, it. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely slows the reading down.
Yeah, and I think it, and I think it's meant to, but yeah, it does mean it's for everybody, and it may not be for everybody right now. That's the thing. Like, you know, like sometimes you discover a poet that everybody else knew about, and you're like, this person is great, you know, and you're reading poems from 30 years ago. And you're like, this is fantastic.
Some Instagram poets I won't name.
Yeah. You should name them.
I won't.
No, I know. You nice.
I try. It's really, really, really.
But actually, I just realized I think I hijacked that. So, Sarah, what else are you doing? What are the projects are you working on? Besides chapbooks.
So there's a reading series that I was doing here. I'm in Hollywood, East Hollywood. I don't think I mentioned that before.
Yeah, we can tell from the grass.
The grass, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't look like Hollywood grass.
No, yeah, I'm like in a field and somewhere random. But so I started a reading series here, and then, you know, just because of logical stuff and being busy, I ended up stopping it. But then when quarantine started, or whatever it's called, whatever the technical term is, I was like, kind of joking. I was like, oh, what if I started it back up again? And then like 5 minutes later, I made an Instagram and like booked the first person, because that's how my mind works.
Wait, tell me where this is. Where is it?
Oh, I haven't told you about okay, so it's just Instagram, because that's the only social media platform I can handle. I don't know, Facebook I can't handle, or Twitter I've never even tried. I've never had a Twitter before.
Don't go there. It's horrible.
Yeah. But it's on Instagram, and it's _social_underground.
Oh yes, that's you.
That's me. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And my boyfriend helps with it too. He's more of the music part, because we try to showcase music, art, basically any form of art that is out there. We try to showcase it. You know, poets, musicians, artists. Yeah. So, and we're just trying to do artists that are already out there, because I already ran a literary journal, and it's so time consuming, and you know,
Okay.
so for me it's like, okay, this work's already here, so what if I just reshare it? Like, what if that's my job is to just reshare stuff and like give people a microphone for a second? Or
yeah, and which is important because you know, I think this season I'd lost a bunch of readings that I'd already signed up for. They're like, oh, Andre's reading in this month, and then so I was going to read on Hillary's reading series. I was reading on Summer's reading series. I think I had another reading at Counterpath, you know, but the year was just getting started, and then you know, it just all kind of you know, went away. And actually, Sarah gave me a platform to do an Instagram live reading,
and it was great
with Violet, yeah. And so I was like, that is a very neat idea, and here I am, because it sometimes just takes other people, like it takes Tamika making postcards, it makes you doing your thing that gives somebody else the vehicle, because otherwise I was just sitting around in the basement feeling sorry for myself. Waiting to get sick and die, which I still might be doing, but I'm just like, now I get to read poems sometimes.
In the basement, waiting to get sick and die.
In a basement, yeah, exactly. Now with more poetry, okay.
Yeah.
So I was grateful for the venue. I'd never gone live on Instagram before. I mean, like,
I
see
didn't
people
know
doing
how
it all
to
the
do
time.
it.
I was just like, what? And so, yeah, I had to text Sarah before, like, I've never gone live before. I don't want to sound like my 44-year-old self, but
literally everyone texted me that before the reading. So how do we do this? Question mark. And I'd never done it before this either. I was like Googling it before. I'd be like, okay, how do I do this? What is possible?
Yeah, but what is possible is what we put out for people, and I think that's a great part of our work that is not necessarily self-focused, that is somewhat community focused, even though that might not be where you're intending in the original process. You're like, I just want to make chapbooks, I want to do this, or I want to have people read here, you know, and then it happens and people are like, I'm happy to read here, or it lights a fire into them. You know, I'm still waiting for someone to light a fire for us so I could submit some stuff, but you know, like the publishing world is always,
it's complicated.
It's complicated, and it's personality dominated. So sometimes just because you're good, but you're not in the moment, you don't fit what the current narrative is for 2020. So, you know, your 2020 poems will come out in 2014, or should have come out in 1998. I don't know, but you know, it's like, what do you do? But you know, this whole thing has been kind of pushing me towards that, making more of it. So you have people read on Instagram Live, and then what else?
What else? We're doing a poetry workshop online.
That's right. I'm in it.
That?
You're sort of in it, Tamika. Well, you're in the email thread.
Oh, I'm in the email thread. That's right.
Not to call you out, because it's supposed to be a stress-free thing. Because
this Sunday,
I've been part of workshops that weren't, you know, where there were kind of like, you know, a lot of rules, and that's hard for me, and I think it's hard for everyone else because everyone is so busy, like you know. And if there are a lot of rules, they're never gonna show up. They're just gonna quit right away. So I feel like there needs to be a space for people that's stress-free, no commitment. If you want to show up. It's always gonna be here for you. So
yeah. I'm worried about starting one right now, or jumping on one that just started, because like right after, like, okay, we started, I got an email and there was like a whole bunch of rules, and I was just like,
yeah.
I was like, well, Sunday I'll be a service because I just have to upload my thing in the Google Doc
and maybe show up.
And maybe show up, yeah, you know. Although I think on our first couple meetings, we've had some really good insights, because these are not all people that I know. Some of them are people I know, but I think your friend's name is Mike.
Mike Franklin, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes Mike just comes out with like a nugget that you're like, what? You know, like he just read and had this different, and you're like, I didn't even see that, you know. So I think it's great. The energy is great when you can bounce off of other people, like coffee chats, when you start talking with people and you're like, oh, they're doing this, and it creates energy or sustains some energy that you were having, or thoughts that you were thinking about, which is why I enjoyed the first few coffee chats. I mean, I was pestering Tamika.
I know a lot of people are going to have another one.
Yeah, I was like, when's the next one?
Oh, is that how it is? She's going to do that now?
Yeah.
Like,
So how did it start?
Well, I was doing them in the morning, but I have to work in the mornings now, so my time is going to change.
Mm-hmm. And it was more like, it was a little bit open world, so it was like I popped in because I knew Tamika, but there were lots of times I didn't know anyone else, right? So like, I wanted to commune with people. You were hungry to do it. It's nice to start that with somebody you know. But so a lot of times, you know, I'd pop in and I'd just listen, and these people were talking. Some people were sewing things, some people were writers, some people were other teachers, some people were musicians, and everybody was sort of talking about what's going on with them. And, you know, you'd listen, or somebody ask you a question, or you'd feel like inclined to share. And I didn't realize how hungry I was for that. So after the first one, I was like, messaging to me like, whenever you do this, consider me, you know, like, I want to be at the coffee chat. And
I saw some other ones start up too, like an artist friend of mine started one where she called it a stitch and bitch, but really we were all in our studios, and so I was working on my postcards, someone was making hats, someone was like pouring concrete or something, and like I don't remember what she was doing, but we were all working on something in our studios. That was pretty fun. Hopefully she'll have another one. It was cool to be included in on that.
Yeah, someone else was just doing one. They called it like a craft. It was like a craft Zoom. So everybody popped in. They were doing different things. Yeah, it was Kel. So their former partner was, and their new partner runs a bike shop. So they were doing like a bike repair. Like right there, it's a bike apart doing a bike repair. And people who wanted to learn about bike repair were doing that. Kel was doing a puzzle. Some people were painting. Other people were sewing. It was just sort of like, but the important part was they were connecting while they were doing their thing.
Right.
They're alone together.
They're alone together.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the best we can hope for right now is that, you know, alone together. So like I said, once Tamika started doing that, I was hungry for it. I was like, I didn't realize I was hungry for it, but after I got off, I was like, you know, like I didn't want to keep sitting there. My back hurt, you know, like being on the computer all the time. But like, I was like, when is the next one? You know, because it really was like.
Yeah, that's good for me to hear too, because sometimes I'm like, you're not totally sure how things are received. And I mean, I definitely started those out of my own personal need, because in quarantine, it's just me. I don't have pets. I've been buying plants and planting like veggie stubs and stuff.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about your garden, if that's appropriate in this chat.
Well,
the kitchen garden.
It's just kind of funny. I always thought I wasn't a green thumb, and it's just I'm so incredibly busy most of the time. Before quarantine, I was working 5 jobs, 7 days a week. So there's not a lot of time to do anything but eat Chipotle and run. You know what I'm saying? So having plants, I didn't have headspace for that. I didn't have headspace for even, you know, doing my dishes half the time. Like there was like sometime during my MFA, I actually threw away a bunch of dishes because I looked around one day and I was just like, oh,
I'm not washing
this is
these.
Bad. Real bad. I'm just gonna have 2 plates and 1 set of silverware. That's it.
Yeah.
From, you know, because I was just like, oh, obviously
They'll force you to deal with them.
Yeah, it's like you get that little break or something, and then you're like, fuck. I don't want anyone to know this about me, but now the whole world knows about it. It's fine.
Yeah, but I mean, you also didn't think that you could cook.
Yeah,
quarantine,
I've been
you've been cooking.
I've been accused of not being able to cook, but again, it's that headspace thing. Like, I just, you know, I just bought a ladle and a cheese grater. These are 2 things that were not in my kitchen that seem to be like kind of integral pieces of the kitchen, you know. And so I keep looking at my plants is what I'm doing. I'm like, oh.
I'll look at mine too.
I will also look at mine then.
I have 14 more on the way, and I'm staring.
Is our album cover?
Yeah, like we were
oh
all
my gosh,
looking at plants.
Can I print screen?
Yeah, sure. Let's look
Okay,
at our
we're
plants.
gonna look at our plants.
Yeah, we'll look at our plants.
Are we still posing?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're looking at our plants.
let me make sure I captured it. All
right, tell us when.
Yes, okay. I'll share that later.
Okay.
on the socials.
Right.
Cool. That's fun.
Oh, so yeah, you asked us originally about work. What was the second thing?
Mostly organic like stuff. Well, I guess usually we start a thing by introducing ourselves. We don't really do that.
We didn't do that, huh? Yeah.
We should probably do that. By the way, both Sarah and Andre are both really amazing poets as well.
Well, thanks for saying that.
No, I really feel that way. I don't just say I probably would have said thank you for sharing your work if I was trying to figure out what good things I wanted to say about it. I mean, I always try to thank people for their work because I feel that it is a privilege to read other people's work.
It is.
Also, I don't want to be that person that's like, this sucks, you should never do that again, because there are people who do that to people.
Yeah,
and I think that's really fucked up.
It is, because that's sometimes it's just that moment, that day. You never know what that person's capable of.
Yeah, not everyone has the same tastes either.
Yeah, exactly. We were talking about Michael Scheffler earlier, who's, I remember the first time I saw his work, Sarah and I were in that workshop together, and I saw his work and my jaw literally dropped. I had no idea what was going on, but I knew it was fucking brilliant. And I kept reading it and reading it and reading it over it. And it wasn't until the workshop where I was starting to really get it, because there are some really cool things that he does with his work to literally make you slow down your reading, right? And he does some other stuff too. I really don't know what he's doing. Well, but it made me cry.
He knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
That's all that matters.
What he's doing.
Yeah.
And like, I hope he publishes soon. It's just like, I admitted that. I'm like, I know this is amazing. This is over my head. I need help understanding what is happening here if you are willing to share that. I just know something changed in me when I read it, and I don't know what it was. And then also taste too. Like, I've been recommended some stuff to read and people are like, oh, this is so great. I'm like, I don't get it.
Or I don't get the part that's great. Yeah, like.
And I mean, something interesting I heard actually from Carolina. I don't know how to say her last name. I never asked her how to say her last name. Abade, yeah. Carolina Abade. On our Twitter one time, she said, every piece of poetry you read, you learn something from it. And I was like, that's what I need to hold in front of me every time I'm looking at someone's poems.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Because I'm in a workshop right now.
Right? Oh, sorry.
What's that?
Yeah. I digress. Tamika does teach.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Lilly adjunct instructor.
No, there's no only.
My family is very proud. If only they knew the reality. I love you, Mom.
Well, it's always harder than it looks. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
And adjuncts do the work of full professors. The adjunct
and we're
thing
learning
is
how to
just,
do it while we're doing it.
Yeah, you do it for less and with less time. And so I mean it's such a for me, I think it's a very malicious designation that universities have come up with once they started to realize that they are actually running like for-profits versus non-profit, right. And so once that money issue came in, it was like, yeah, well, let's get 50 people to do it for less and provide no way for them to have living doing this thing that they love, but that we also value and need them to do. That's why we keep getting adjuncts.
Just for the record, I make more at Starbucks teaching or Starbucks working part-time than I do as an adjunct instructor, and I have insurance. So like,
yeah, I mean, I'll just be honest. When I dropped out of school, I dropped out of college, and one of the reasons was I was managing at this theater. I was managing the box office and call center, and then sometimes the theater, all the personnel on the floor. And so I was doing these classes, these couple classes that were like twice a week, and one that was once a week, and they're really long. I went there, and the person who was teaching was an adjunct. He had his doctorate just recently, and it just sort of like with the conversation kind of went off, and he was just sort of talking about his life, probably because he needed to in that moment. And he was like, it's just really frustrating. I have to teach at 5 different campuses, and I have these different classes, and I have all this debt because I just got my PhD, and I, at the time he was like, and I make like $28,000 a year.
Yeah.
Now, I was 20 something, 21 or 22 or something like that, and I was sitting in that class, and I was like, I make 37 right now. I live in a place. At that time, I lived in a place where 37 could get you a house, because the places where I was, the houses were like 80,000, and I had I had insurance, and I had all this stuff. I dropped out of that class and school that same week. I was just like, no, because I'm like, I was thinking of becoming like a getting a doctorate and becoming a professor, and I was like, no, this dude was like, and I was like, But it's not to say that what he was doing was not important, because I still remember and discuss what I learned in that class up until I dropped out. Right. And like I said, the designation is what's bullshit. He's no less of a person. They just give him less to give you all actually less to get by on, because they're managing profits and paying coaches and deans and provosts the big dough. And then they have a bunch of people like, oh, and if you don't like it, we're just going to get somebody else, instead of like these lifelong relationships that universities used to have. My aunt is a professor. She just retired 2 weeks ago. And she's just, the idea of tenure has changed. She's like, she had the old school tenure where there's nothing they could do to get rid of her. But at the same time, she produced a lot from, she published a lot of work. She did a lot of research that they didn't have before. And every time she got a grant or someone, gave her an award for her work, it reflected on the university. But now they don't value that as much. They value profit, which is a tough place to be for a place who's educating people. Because otherwise your instruction then is you're instructing them in capitalism versus education or human arts.
Yeah, some students in multiple places, not just where I've taught, have come in and like, well, I'm paying for this, you need to give me the grade, is the attitude. And that's an awkward place to be in. There are some departments, not mine, thankfully, but there are some departments that are just like, it makes it difficult for some professors to be able to be good professors, to have a good learning environment where people are pushed a little because students sometimes take that personally, that being pushed. And so capitalism is definitely changing what that landscape looks like. It's pretty gross. It's been happening a long time.
Yeah, it's been years. Like I said, I'm old, so I was noticing it even then, but it wasn't always. It wasn't always. Like the only adjunct type of person you had was someone who was in a work study, and they were in a work study because they were trying to be a professor after they were finished. But so they were like exploited like interns in a way, but at the same time they were getting something out of it. But this whole system that they have got people set up on, man, you know, it makes me think about academia in a way. I used to hold it in a certain esteem, but in the last probably 20 years, I've been like, oh, it's just like any other corporation that I've worked for. Like, you know, there's sabotage, there's, you know, there are all these other things, and it's not just, you know, it needs a recentering. I mean, somebody needs to run through all these universities with like a big stick of sage and just just cleanse it, because, you know, there's just bad mindedness and feelings.
There's this book that was actually recommended by, I'm pretty sure it was recommended by, we might have lost Andre for a little bit.
No, I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, you are here. I'm like, what happened?
Yeah, I just, I can't pick my nose on camera.
Oh, gotcha.
That's fair.
This book is called The Slow Professor, and they talk about some of those things a lot, about like what the academy looks like, and it is how it is, and therefore what can we do from the inside, and it kind of helps reform some of my personal talk around this. I think so. I'm the kind of person where I go into things to learn as much as I possibly can, and I also don't have any expectation of it necessarily taking care of me. So I always try to start. That's why I had 5 jobs, working 7 days a week, because I was trying to shift things so that it would balance out. Hopefully, the balancing came a little differently than I thought it would come, and that's fine. I'm still working on that, but like, it's always like, what do I want to learn here? And like for me, everything I do informs all the other things. So I'm a massage therapist, and I feel like the things I've learned from being a massage therapist comes into the classroom a lot. Everything from having good boundaries that also move sometimes, especially during this time. I'm realizing that maybe my boundaries have been too strict, and it's okay to be a little vulnerable with students, you know, because ultimately it's not about, I would like to get paid more, for sure, but I've set myself up so that that isn't the only thing I'm depending on, and there are certain things that I want to get out of it. I mean, a lot of it is curiosity. I want to see what that world is like, and what I can get out of it, and what I can contribute.
Yeah. I think we lost Sarah. Sarah, you still there? Sarah looks frozen. Or is that just me, Tamika? Does Sarah look frozen?
It says there are 4 participants.
Oh, so she's reconnecting. She was looking frozen on my screen.
Yeah, my computer totally shit out.
Okay.
Now I'm on my phone, but I can't figure out video.
Oh man.
Okay, there we go. Hi.
Hey.
I like this view too. Can I pause really quick and come back?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, there we go.
Hey.
Oh, better. How's everyone doing?
Everyone's good.
Good.
Back from the commercial break.
Commercial break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got to tell you what this has been brought to NPR Music.
Yeah, it's brought to you by Tiny Dusk.
Was it sunflowers back there? Sunflowers? Sunflowers?
Yeah.
It's just a tapestry. I don't know how to do the thing on my phone with the background.
Oh. Uh-huh.
It's a good background though. I like the sunflowers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's an elephant. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was like a branch or.
It's actually a blanket, but it didn't fit on my bed, so I just put it on the wall.
Nice.
That works.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to hear more about what you're doing right now. If you're willing to share, and if you're not able to do anything during this time, that's totally understandable. You know, like I've been cooking a lot and planting things in dirt.
Yeah, those are all important. I was with you. I couldn't write anything, so the first month of pandemic I couldn't write anything. There was no work for the packets even for schoolwork. You know, much less joy or to further my other goals. And so the 30-30 helped me kick into that. Now, I wasn't writing the fiction I was supposed to be writing, but I was able to write poems. I was able to, because I've always been able to write poems. So I think once, some of the things are shutting you down, like pandemic stuff is shutting me down, fear, the fact that people are losing their work is shutting me down. I was still able to do that because it's sort of like, like muscle memory. Like I can make a poem, I can use an image, I can craft something. I'm not saying it's going to be good, but I'm saying I can do that versus like trying to build an arc for a whole piece of fiction, So
yeah,
I did start to write again, and I don't know if it's all contributing to my current thesis. It might actually be something else, because there were some other things I was writing about in the thesis, and it may have changed, and a lot of people's perspective might have changed recently, because I think a lot of this counts like trauma for people, like,
sure,
it's like months of anxiety, different levels of anxiety, but not being without it, and being a person that is a sufferer from anxiety. At times, I've known it to be, even during this period, to be sometimes crippling, So, so I think I was grateful that anything was coming out, that I was writing anything. But it seemed like I'd been writing recently some pandemic poems, and like they might have a place for right now. So I'm working on that and my thesis. I'm trying to finish Ocean Vuong's book, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. There are painting supplies because I want to make some paintings, and I think I'm just going to chase down any of the creative threads that are pulsating right now, so that I could be doing something, because I think it's important to do something. So I've also been taking a lot of joy in cooking, like you mentioned, Tamika. So like I've been cooking like maybe once or twice a day, and kind of taking my time, or experimenting, or trying things I hadn't tried before, which I think are all good for the mind, and at least I know they're good for the spirit. Like I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying that cooking part. Like I'm enjoying getting up and looking forward to when we're going to make this thing, because I've been thinking about it, and things that probably would have gotten lost if I was still commuting to work. I have like 30 people had 30 people that were on my staff, and everything from, if everybody's having a small problem that day, even if it's just tiny, it's still 30 problems for me. Like people want, I just need this. And so like, I think a lot of that took away from this. So there are blessings in it. I mean, certainly there are new concerns in pandemic life, but there are also some blessings, like maybe it's, I have financial worries at the moment, but like, I'm also not worried about it. Like I'm enjoying writing stuff, and that's important to me, and it feels good. And maybe that's all I need, at least for right now. And so, speaking on the moment, yeah, that's where I am. It's like, I'm getting to those creative outlets. Anyone that speaks to me, hey, if I wanted to redo the bathroom, something like that, I would do that too. But anything to keep stimulated and keep that thing kind of flowing through your creativity in whatever form it takes. And I've seen some of your cooking creations, so like was it the bread pudding?
Yeah, I made a bread pudding out of chocolate cake. I didn't have eggs, so I made an eggless chocolate cake. It's a little dense, and I'm not big on leftovers, especially if they're not necessarily the texture I like. So I made bread pudding out of it, and it was okay. I was sad I didn't have anyone to share it with, but I'll have to make it again on purpose.
Yeah, but you now have that new skill, which is great. I've been taking pictures of things that I've made to sort of remind me, because you end up making a lot of meals, and I was going to tell you though, like I learned something interesting from this whole like cooking thing, that you can use chickpea, the water that chickpeas come in, you can use that to make meringue, and as a substitute for egg whites. You can stiffen them up, and you can also whip them into like meringue or whipped cream. Yeah. And so I was like, what? Because it's a great non-dairy option. I have a dairy allergy, so like I'm like, chickpea whipped cream. Yeah, you just whip it. You add sugar. You can flavor
and it's
it.
good.
Well, I used it. I haven't made the whipped cream yet, but I used it to make. What did I use it to make? Something that needed egg whites.
Okay.
So that reminded me when you're like, I didn't have eggs, but I was like, hey, if you got canned chickpeas.
Yeah, and then you can make hummus with the rest of it too.
Yeah.
What?
You can make some hummus with the rest of it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Hummus out of the chickpeas and
yeah,
exactly.
So how are things going for you, Sarah?
Pretty good. A lot of cooking, cleaning, rearranging the furniture 1,000 times. Making poetry videos where my boyfriend does like music and then I read a poem, like kind of overlapping it together. That's been really fun.
Where are those?
Instagram, the only place I am.
Okay, so I need to pay attention more to your Instagram.
I mean, you don't have to.
I would like to. There's a lot of weird stuff in there. I'm like, why is this showing up? So I'd rather see those for sure. I'll check that out.
I've been trying to make some with other people as well too. I made some with my friend Brian, and then Jason is actually the one that lit the fire under my ass because he texted me because at my thesis defense I mentioned wanting to make some kind of multimedia video thing, and he texted me and was like, oh, I was thinking about what you were saying, like, and sent me basically like asked me to send him a poem, and then it kind of turned into like a project. So Jason is the reason. So thank you, Jason. Shout out.
Shout out to Jason.
Yeah. Other than that, reading, writing, like so much, like probably as much as I did in high school, which is the most inspired I ever was.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you?
Me? I'm doing the same thing as ever, as just not working as much. I work at Starbucks. And this week going back, I'm just realizing even just the one job is one of the things I'm really nervous about is losing the space that I've finally gotten without having to work for 5 weeks, and just learning that I really like planting things, and I just want to plant all of the things. So I actually started with carrot nibs because I wanted to start with easy stuff, and so you can grow a lot of stuff from kitchen scraps. And the garlic that I wasn't using that was starting to shrivel, I planted those. So I have garlic scapes to put in soups and stuff. And I've been writing a little bit. I'm actually revising my manuscript again to send it out. And then I have smatterings of other things for other projects that I'm thinking about every day. My place is kind of a mess. So I'm like little by little, tiny bits, step by step, just getting my house together so that I can organize some of that stuff. I hope that doesn't sound like an excuse. It's just I do feel like I need to have a clear table to be able to piece everything out.
No, I'm the exact same way. Like I have to clean a room. If the room is messy, my head is messy. So I have to.
Yeah.
I gotta get just right before I write. Exactly.
Yeah. It's and it's been like this for a while. Like during my MFA, my office was pretty much an anti-room of file and book boxes. Some of them half pulled apart and stuff. So it's a real bad mess. No one ever saw this room. And there was a pathway leading to the spot at the desk where I did my MFA. So I've been slowly digging myself out of that.
It's weird because I I know that's not supposed to be good, but it sounds good. Like I'm into it. I'm like, ooh.
Turn your back to it. You got to get it done.
There's there's a lot of, papers and books and probably source materials there. And I'm with you. Like, I don't know what to do work-wise or when I go back to look for work. I mean, I don't know. Like, this is obviously not sustainable, but also, yeah, there's this creeping fear that I will lose access to the space. And the space is something I really like. Like I said, I focus on that first meal and what I'm going to make. And then I have it and I have my coffee. I might bring it with me and I come downstairs and I'm like, oh, I'm going to write a little bit. I'm going to read a little bit. And I've been craving that sort of setup.
Yeah.
For decades.
What are some ways to keep that space?
Previously I thought it was academia, but like academia is like not what it used to be. Like our conversation about it is that things have changed. So I don't know now, like how someone would be able to sustain this sort of like creative work and work balance, but that goes hand in hand. Like, so, being a person who is a poet and then teaching poetry seems ideal, because when, you're telling your boss, I got this book coming, it's like, coming now, I need to take a sabbatical. They're like, with it, like, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I could mention before. They'd be like, yeah, but we have Walmart coming. You can't be off. And I'll be like, so like,
yeah,
that what was my real life 2 months ago is now somehow drastically different, and I'm not sure I want to go back, though there are so many uncertain things. Like you, the space that I found to do some of this stuff seems really valuable to me, and I don't want to give it up.
That. I'm like, I feel really desperate about it. Like, well, how can I keep this? Like, this is more living than I've done in a long time. And I'm just sticking my hands in dirt.
Yeah.
Or repurposing leftovers,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have time.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. I mean, some of that's led me to be like, maybe I should go to culinary school. Like,
right.
So like, like some of that stuff's just like popping in. But I think all of it is a message to something that seems to be elusive, and I don't have the answer. And you've asked a very direct question. I don't have the answer. I don't know even how to do it for myself, but that we were not doing our best living. We were making a living, but we were not living. This year I haven't had a chance to do my garden. That's something I like to do every year. I have a little bathtub garden at the house, and every year I grow a couple different things. Always tomatoes, because I love some tomatoes, boy. Ooh. I can eat them like apples. But sometimes it's squash, sometimes it's whatever, and this year all this stuff happened and I just didn't plant anything, didn't put anything in the ground.
Sure.
But other things have happened. Like I said, cooking's crept in, and I'm tending to some cactus and plants over here in the window. I have a lot of plants at my regular house. There's probably 30 or 40 plants, a couple trees. I'm sure the housemate is like, why do you keep making more plants and bringing them home? They make me happy. So I'm with you. I don't have the answer of how to maintain it, keep it, or even have it sometimes. I don't know. But I'm very concerned about it, and I want to figure it out.
What about you, Sarah? Is it kind of the same thing?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know if I have an answer other than the community. Maybe we can keep checking in with each other, because I know even community gets lost in the everyday, because so-and-so's like, oh, I can't today, I'm busy, whereas like now we're not, right? So how long have we been doing this coffee chat? Like, could we do that on a normal, what is it, Wednesday? Is it Wednesday, right?
It was like a Wednesday. Yeah.
Okay. I think I only knew that because we specifically were doing this chat today.
Right.
The only thing I had going on. But yeah, I think just checking in with each other, kind of, because even like, you know, my friends that have moved away, I've been pretty close with them during all this because everything's online now. So it's like, oh, you know, I gotta check in with so-and-so, or so maybe just allowing ourselves more time instead of like committing to everything on the weekends or at night, you know, going to every show or going to every whatever.
Right.
Maybe just picking one once a week or once a month or something, and easier
that. But it is, yeah, it really is. I mean, capitalism, one. And two, we know so many amazing people, and it feels that it's hard not to feel obligated to have to go to try to make it to as many things as possible and just support as many things as possible. I've had talks about that from multiple people, because I do feel that all the time. I feel guilty if I can't show up, which is often, because, you know, I work a lot and or have in the past, and I'm just trying to figure out like how can I make the minimum work and also be able to maintain enough headspace to be able to do that work. And by work I mean my writing and maybe music, but especially the writing, because there are just some things I'm trying to figure out there, and I think that they're really important. And while I'm not necessarily writing for anyone else, I think that some of it could be helpful for other people, but that is not the purpose. I'm right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like, I think we said something about that before. Like, if you do it, even if you do it badly, then someone's like, oh, wait, okay, what if I did this thing like this, you know? And then seeing what happens. And so for me, a lot of it is finding words for my experience, finding words for the things that, you know, my inner self experiences, or, you know, these kind of juxtaposing ideas and understandings and stuff, like how do I reconcile them? And I'm finding that there are other people looking for similar answers, you know, because there isn't a roadmap, and the things that are written sometimes are very strictly limiting. They're just limiting. They're limited, and they don't talk beyond a certain point. So, and you know, that could be queerness, that could be being a person of color, that could be being Black, that could be, you know, not knowing if I can claim my Native ancestry, that, you know, like all kinds of things. So, for example, right? And all I know, just like you all I know is I want to keep it, and I know it's necessary. For my students, it's become really important for me to teach a module on creativity. And the reason is because I teach at Red Rocks right now, and a lot of the students that come in are, you know, in technology or business or, you know, those kinds of fields, and a lot of them don't think that they're creative people, which I think is very curious. And so I like to have this talk about creativity, and one of the people I like to bring up is Neri Oxman, who's super worth looking up, because she just goes, and she's a designer, and she has a military background, background training in medicine, and also is a designer and engineer, and she teaches at MIT, and is a really also has a really amazing eye for fashion, and some of her work has appeared on runways, you know. So she's a really interesting person to watch, because there are all these cross sections in her knowledge, and then she brings other people in as well with all of their respective knowledges to create answers to problems that we don't know we have yet necessarily, and like answers that we'll need 100 years from now, instead of like right now, things that'll last that long or longer, you know. So like, what would happen if we collaborated with nature to build buildings, for example? Those are the kinds of questions she's asking. Like, what does that look like? What is that material? And how can we make it sustainable? And it's really exciting, and I hope I would love to see us go that direction. But anyway, a little sidetracked. Just the creativity part is like, what is creativity, right? It's actually, it can be a practice, and you can prepare for it, and you can make space for it. And for creativity to happen, you actually have to make space for it to happen. And our society doesn't let us. Our attention is split so much by capitalism and social media, and all kinds of other things. And I love social media. I love having things being available. Like, I love my Instacart and stuff like that. And I do feel my attention split all the time. Like, it's just like, when can I sit down and have 3 days to recalibrate and then get into a mode and work on something to its end, you know, or however far I can get. And that's kind of my process. I need about 3 or 4 days to be like, okay, I'm in the zone now. The door's closed. I'm doing my work. And it needs to be phone off and all of that, you know. But I don't know. I think I can't remember totally how that was connected, but that's what my brain does.
You were talking about creativity and whether or not it's a mode, or...
Well, I mean, there have been studies done on creativity, so like, you can actually, like, I'm not remembering off the top of my head, I have it all in my notes somewhere, but essentially it's like a cycle, and it doesn't necessarily happen in the exact same cycle all the time, but there are different parts of creativity. So like, I don't know, I guess a short example is like, you go to sleep with a question and you wake up with an answer. Or maybe you've been walking around with a question all the time, or all day, and then you come up with the answer while you're falling asleep. Because we have different ways of accessing it and also processing. So like, that was one of the examples, is like, some of us wake up with the idea and some of us fall asleep with the idea. And so sometimes sleep provides that space that we need to like process and reformat all the bits, all the ideas and stuff that we can't consciously necessarily access.
Or the dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But there's a way to do it in waking, obviously, too. So we hear about scientists all the time, like, he took a daily 3-hour walk, rain or shine, but you know, it was blizzarding snow and he still took his 3-hour walk.
Right.
You know, because it's like a different headspace we get in when we do that, when we're fending off snow.
I want to say I can relate, but
Hollywood.
I fell in snow once when I was in Denver.
I remember that.
Did you get excited about it?
No, I'm just like so bad at, like, how do you guys do that? I don't know. I just don't get it.
Just don't get snow.
Yeah, I just can't physically. I mean, like, I'm sure if I did it more than once, like, I would get used to it, but
yeah. Well, I think Jason had the similar experience, so you're not alone.
Yeah, Mike too. Mike Franklin. He fell. I feel bad laughing. He would be laughing too if he were here.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. When you came for your thesis, that's fair.
Well, I have one more question for y'all. about what is your writing philosophy, and has it changed during quarantine?
Andre, are you chewing?
Mm.
Okay. So I guess I'll go. Writing philosophy. It's a hard one. I don't think I ever really had much of a philosophy. It's kind of just a random, like, inspiration that appears out of nowhere, and then go write it down and then edit it later, or don't edit it later. I don't think I have too much of a philosophy.
Do you have writers that kind of inform your work a little bit, or?
That actually, I was just talking about that with Violet right before this. We were talking about our influences. So I used to have, all these writers where I was like, this person made me who I am, like the writer I am. And now when I go back and read their work, I'm like, editing it with like a red pen in my head, and I like can't get through it. And I think my influences are always changing depending on, where I'm at. Like right now, I've been reading a lot of like Arab American writers, for obvious, identity reasons that we all go through.
Yeah.
So those are the writers who I would say are my favorite now. Maybe in 10 years, I'll be like, I don't know why I like this so much, or which probably isn't true. Probably won't be true. But
have you read any Darwish?
I haven't. I need to.
Yes.
But I haven't.
You need to. Just for that last part that you were saying. Philosophy-wise, and maybe I'll go more the route of Sarah, like process-wise, some things have changed recently. I feel like it's become a little bit more urgent to write, and that I'm not trying to be self-important, but that the writing I'm working on is important. It's important for me to either get out or get finished, or whatever it is. Like I gotta get it down, get it finished, and either I'm moving on or I set it aside, whatever it is. But that has felt, again, it's taken on a new importance in the absence of regular work, which now I can say is maybe a distraction from the former. That you mentioned capitalism and what have you, and but yeah, the paper chase keeps you away from the creative part of it, unless you're thinking of selling the creative part of it. But as we know in poets, it's not like a painting. You're not getting rich off these poems.
We're probably going to trade them with each other. Is
right.
Probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's the value.
Trade poems for food. So as far as the philosophy goes, it is that it maybe has taken on a new significance and new importance to me personally to either do or carry out and maintain a space for, which I can see it's really fragile. That can go away. Like, if I start working again, do I lose that? Do I lose the rhythm of it? But otherwise, I think I write because I need to. Like going all the way back to that thing I was telling you about Falada, it's, the people that are those things need to do those things. You feel pushed internally to do it. And so, and I'm getting in touch with that and feeling more and more of it.
Yeah.
Currently, yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
I don't know if it helps, but Sophronia Scott does those walks with Sophronia, which I love. And she recently did one, and she was talking about how if you can't write during this time, that's okay. I mean, I don't feel like any of us were saying that, but I did feel for a little bit I was having a little bit of a hard time. But she said, if you can't write right now, take notes, because what we're seeing during this time is going to be, it can really bring our writing alive, is what she was saying.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really beautiful message, because it's really easy to cycle and be like, I'm not writing that right now, I'm not writing. But that's the thing, is the another friend of mine, Nashawn Cook, a poet here in Denver as well, and also a horse trainer. Big lesson I learned from him is that sometimes the poem is exactly how it showed up. And so, like, I was thinking about what Sophronia said, and just like some of the things I've been seeing, and some of them are very strange, you know, very strange or very telling. And you take the note, and that's the poem. It's not like first thought, best thought, because obviously you're going to edit it or whatever. I have mixed feelings about Kerouac personally, but like, and his methods. I won't go into that though, because it got me in trouble one time. Anyway, on a beatnik panel, no less. I was like, I don't know why y'all have me here. I'm just saying. And it got uncomfortable. But like, it's just like, so an example is like, I'm looking out of my old apartment window onto the street, and there usually isn't a lot of kids, right? There usually aren't a lot of kids because it's New Denver. So a lot of the kids have moved out with all the families that used to live there. A lot of dogs and outfits though. Anyway, there was a dad who was walking with his kid, and the kid was like in a little, you know, toy car thing or something, and kind of trailing behind, but the kid started ramming up on his feet from the back, just like like on purpose. And that was what I saw, and I was like, whoa, that's kind of deep, man. Like, and the dad's being real patient, but you can tell it hurts him, you know, like his poor heels. And that was the poem that day, you know. Or like one time I was walking up here, and I did actually write this down in my Corona notebook, which I need to find in this pile of stuff. But like, I really like to watch the crows, and I really like to watch the crows when there's a hawk in the neighborhood, because the crows like to fuck with the hawks. So this hawk just wanted to eat its meal in peace and kept trying to find a place to eat it. And the crows kept cinching in closer and closer, and they're just really super loud, like cawing and stuff. And you can tell the crows like a little nervous and still trying to eat, but also like looking around. And it's just, I feel like that was the poem, you know, like just witnessing that crazy thing happening, because obviously the hawk could kick all of their butts and like feathers everywhere, but for some reason those crows really spooked it. And I see it happen a lot.
Yeah, they actually do that a lot. I was just reading something about crows and ravens, that they hold grudges against people. Like, they're people that they like, and when they like you, for whatever reason, they bring you gifts.
Yeah, I heard from a student, ravens like you best when you are, oh God, what was it? Ravens like you best when you play fair, or something like that. Something like that. I'm not getting it quite right, but I remember I heard that, and I was like, do you realize this is, you need to do something? Yeah, this is good. This is gold.
Yeah, this is gold. Yeah. Yeah, so I mentioned that so that if you get back to your notebook, like, you know, because they had all these examples of people, and then they did research on it. Like, they had some of the researchers just be mean to the crows, like chase them off every day.
Yeah, they still regret that.
Well, they regret that, but the crows associate that sort of bad interaction with them forever. Like, so whenever they see that face, that person, they react. And so it's like, so they hold little grudges. They're like, and but they also do the collaboration. So that's why they're not necessarily afraid of the hawk individually. They are, because the hawk can pick one of them off, but they know the hawk can't get all of them. Right. So, and they're smart enough to fuck with them. It's like,
it is really fun to watch. It really is.
Yeah, I was writing about it in one of the poems I wrote for 3030, but like when I'm home at my house in Denver, it's like in the summer, there's this Russian olive tree that's dying, but it's probably almost 5 stories tall. So the top of it is bare. And the crows arrive there every day between the same times. They start arriving at like 3:45. They get there. Everybody gets there by about 5, and then they make a racket. They just talk about their days and cackle, and and they sit next to each other, and the whole top of the tree is like that. And they just go on, so loud, and then they just slowly like disperse. But that's the summertime evening ritual, and I love sitting out there and watching it, even though it's noisy, but I love it because it's like you're getting a little glimpse of something.
Little crow culture.
Little crow culture, yeah. Look at them having that happy hour. Yeah, yeah, happy hour in the trees.
I want to close this up pretty soon.
Yeah, please.
And I just want to give an opportunity for you both to tell folks how to find you and how to find your work.
A lot of my work is in my computer because I won't send anything out. I don't know what's wrong with me. So occasionally when I read, you might hear something. I have to be better about that, and that is actually on my to-do list. I've been thinking again either about starting the journal, but not necessarily in a binary, but also maybe doing an author web page, just so that people have a place to go.
Yeah, will you let me know if you start the journal?
I mean, I might ask you because I know. Oh, the journal, yeah, definitely. I need med help because I remember it was a time-consuming little project that I had going there. It was, man, and I used to get real mail too. So we get like a tub of mail at the house, like a tub a week, and I'm like, man, these are all submissions, So it was wild. But yeah, so yeah, I'll definitely let you know that. But I'm also pick your brain on like building like an author page.
Oh, sure. I'll do my best with that. Yeah.
But I have some older publications that were in anthologies. I was in one of the Def Poetry Jam anthologies, and
that's cool.
Some of the Cave Canem readers, and other little journals, and but I mean, I suppose the idea is I should probably start sending some stuff out, and then I'll have more to tell you where to find me. But otherwise, you can just find me on Instagram. I'm there. And
what is your handle?
Ooh, there's 2.
All right.
The first handle is
what? I've always been curious about that.
What? Why there's 2?
Yeah, like which am I supposed to tag you in?
All right, so there's 2 because one was supposed to be like your poet page, so that one's all like there's nothing going on because I just use the one I use out of habit because we're creatures of habit. But now they both exist, so I don't know what to do with them. And then and some journals follow the one, like follow me, and I don't really follow them, and the other one follow the other personality. So I'm just like, can you merge these? What happens? So at Cannon Bones, which is CANNONBONES, is the first one, and the other one is at André Hoilette, and then I'm on Facebook as André X EX, so you can find me that way.
Cool.
So, I'd say my latest work, like I have like poetry and journals and things, but I wouldn't say that's the stuff I'm really proud of at the moment. Mm-hmm. So I think the best place to find me and to always be seeing the stuff that I'm proud of would be Instagram at Holden_lyric, and it's private, but if you're part of the community, I let you in. So
yeah. I'm pretty much the same way. I don't just add anyone anymore on my Instagram, but my Twitter is free game pretty much. So hopefully not free game per se, but because I do go through it intermittently. I'm like, oh, that person just needed someone to follow them, so I'll just put them in. I have some folders I put folks in. If I still like what they're posting, but don't necessarily need to see them all the time.
Yep.
Or you don't want exes stalking.
On what?
Or you don't want exes stalking you.
Yeah.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, all those things. Yeah, those. uncomfortable things.
Yeah. Yep.
Anything y'all want to add before we close it out?
No, thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. Like, I always feel like I have homework after all of these talks, so my plan is to record the talks and then dialogue with some of those homeworks a little later.
Nice.
Thank you all for doing this.
Okay.
Especially in this vulnerable space where I'm just adamantly not editing right now. We all may hate this later.
it's all real. It's real.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Well, I'm down.